yes, that's the former cast now, of course, of Doctor Who. It's strange to think that not only are they is it the end of the season, but now they're not just one of them's gone, which we're kind of used to with the Russell T Davies season, but they're both gone. They're both gone, and they've been replaced just by one person. One person leading the show now. Billie Piper. Who'd have thought it? Anthony, you're one of your great big showbiz mates there, Billie Piper. So, we talked about these rumours before. You know, we'd had several sources confirm this to Type 40 way ahead of time. In fact, ever since the BAFTAs debacle from a few weeks ago. But you say you watched it after the fact. You're aware of the conversation that's going on around this particular moment. I don't know if it's gone viral, but it's definitely got people talking about the show again, hasn't it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, my goodness, just listening to the comments and reading the comments on Sunday and today, you know, it's certainly got people talking. And, you know, you get a feeling that not everybody is too keen on this particular idea. I mean, I think Billie Piper is great. And she was great as Rose. You know, she was great in the first couple of series when the series came back. And she's undoubtedly part of the reason why Doctor Who was so successful when it did come back. You know, I had my reservations 20 years ago when they were going to cast, you know, essentially a pop star, pop singer. I'd seen some things like Ruby and the Smoke, but I didn't really know much about Billie Piper. So you had a kind of perception about how she would be in the series, but that completely blew my mind. You know, she was great and the series was great, helped by Eccleston and everybody else. The stories, the scripting, everybody was behind that revival. Fast forward 20 years and Billie Piper, although still fabulous and amazing, you know, this uncertainty of whether she is or isn't the Doctor has caused a lot of people who, you know, some real, without naming names, some real loyal followers of the last couple of years of Doctor Who on X, formerly Twitter, talking about, you know, the new series and loving it and loving every aspect of it. Even they started to turn this morning and yesterday evening saying, oh, it's, you know, it's a muddle, it's a pickle, it's a mess. Are we getting any more? What's happened? So, you know, you expected lots of people to potentially be behind this because of knowing about Billie Piper and who she is.
Yeah.
But it felt that everybody had turned against that and this a lot more than I kind of expected. You know,
I think it's nothing against Billie. I think it's nothing against Billie at all. I wouldn't describe her as a national treasure, but I think there is a generation of people who have grown up with her, either singing or acting or both. I also think she's quite. I also think she's quite a not exactly a relatable figure because she is quite plummy, and she was a stage school kid and all that kind of thing. But the idea of her being a sort of a relatively normal girl from Swindon who's sort of come good, I think there's something that's very appealing about that. So there's no antagonism towards her whatsoever. But I think people have really seen through, not necessarily Doctor Who itself, but the way that current Doctor Who is being run. And obviously what people have landed on, and everybody noticed this. I mean, people are reaching out to me and saying, oh, but this, but that, as if we didn't notice. Everybody noticed this, even though it was only on screen for a millisecond. This caption at the end and introducing Billie Piper. And I was looking for that because it's customary, but it usually comes with another 3 words in a line of type underneath that, doesn't it, Luke? And okay, that's not a classic series thing. It's very much a new series thing, guys, but it's conspicuous by its absence.
Yeah, I think I spoke to Anthony very, very briefly about this on Sunday while I was sitting able. I think, look, she did regenerate from Ncuti Gatwa. Yeah. It is quite obvious she is going to play the 16th Doctor. She is, and just how people, you know, this might be the new way they're doing it. You don't know. Things change. They might have changed it from then. They might change it from now. Credits change. How people want to be credited has changed. They might just be introducing it as that. Yeah, I don't know. I think people are reading a little bit too much into it. I've heard rumblings.
Press release and the publicity, Luke, are describing her as the 16th Doctor, as the new Doctor Who.
Yeah, yeah. well, I had a little phone call with you, didn't I, a couple of weeks ago,
You did.
about this entire situation, and I was like, oh my god, look what I found out. But yeah, I've heard apparently how long she's rumored to stay for. I don't know how true that is, but we'll see. Um, but yeah, I think I'm you know what, I think I'm the only person in the country, but I'm like, I'm all for this. I think she'll be absolutely fantastic. Ironically, on the flight over to Belfast, over to Brussels, I was watching the 11th Hour and Time of Angels, and I was like, oh man, Matt Smith was really. I was like, I missed the Moffat era. I was like, that was really, really good. Yeah, I was like, that was really, really good. But no, I think Billie will be great. I think she'll be a good ambassador for the show. She can probably you can pin a franchise on her because she'll bring some of the casuals back. Not everyone. You will have alienated a lot of the fans have turned off. So it does seem like a bit of a publicity stunt because it's not going to be on our screens till 2026 Christmas special.
2034, I've heard.
Yeah, I think we'll get a 2026 Christmas special. We'll get a 2027 season. Jesus. But I think that's if you're gonna if you can't pin it to her to carry it over, then you just cut to black and leave it, and then you just leave it open ended for someone else to come. So clearly, there is plans to continue it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have just put Billie in randomly.
I understand there is a provisional filming date as well. They look to start filming on further Doctor Who material, but it's not until a lot later in the year. Yes. Presumably, there's a lot of things to sort out between now and then. The more practical, financial aspects of it, more than anything else. And as I understand it, obviously, although the bulk of season 3, a potential season 3, is and was written because it was written for Ncuti Gatwa, this actual material that Billie will be leading hasn't even been written yet, or is still in the early processes of being written. So this is really, really slapdash, and I think that people can tell that. But no, I wouldn't expect it to be on screen until Christmas 2026.
See,
what worries me is the fact that this is. See, what worries me? Well, that's what worries me. That's what worries me. I think that they are. I think they were biding their time with that, and to see. I think it was meant to be a mimetic moment that would trend by Russell T Davies. This is completely cynical, a marketing thing, and then work out how he can write his way out of it after the fact. I'm more inclined to believe that she is the Doctor. I mean, she certainly, for example, she's still wearing the Doctor's clothes. So biologically, the Doctor does appear to have morphed into this female form, resembling somebody he knew before. But after the fact, though, Charlotte, Russell can write himself out of that if need be. So I don't think Russell's even decided himself.
Here's the thing. When I was watching it, my first gut was, oh God, right, she's the Doctor. Like, that was my first, I'll happily admit to that. But then I didn't spot the credit thing because we were getting ready for a stream, so I very quickly got ready for the stream. But then afterwards, people pointed that out. And if it was just that credit, I could go, yeah, it probably is just fans being fans here. But actually, if you look at the press statements, if you look at how they're all talking, they're not naming her as the next Doctor. They're not saying Billie Piper is the 16th Doctor. And I think it's... No. And you can tell, it's like they're talking around. They're saying, Billie will come back. Billie's back, isn't it brilliant? But they're sort of saying, oh, who, why, what? There's a lot of, like, talking around it. So I'm thinking she will lead. I completely agree with you. Whatever comes next on screen, Billie's going to lead it. But because of the fact that she has been two other entities in this show with that face. She's been Bad Wolf, which wasn't the Doctor, and she's been the Moment. And Russell right now loves to dip into his fantasy, loves to dip into sort of the supernatural and the non-logical explanations for stuff. So I think she's going to be something else. I think this is going to be an echo of maybe Bad Wolf or The Moment, or maybe that's why we've had so much gods in the last couple of series of shooting, maybe this is the pantheon, the gods.
Once you introduce gods and beings that can do things with the click of the fingers,
That's
like Q in Next Generation, you can do pretty much anything. And that's why this version of the series, this premise, this shift to it, has been so hard to swallow and to invest in, because people can appear, magically reappear, disappear out of existence. I just think it doesn't suit Doctor Who, any of this.
Like I said, I think, I'm not saying we're not going to get her on screen, but I don't think she's the next Doctor.
You see, I agree
for all intents and purposes, David, excuse me, but for all intents and purposes, is when somebody is leading this show, they are effectively, legitimately, in inverted commas, Doctor Who to the British public. Yeah. So now, in the time in between, for the next 2 to 3 years, people are going to be back to referring to Billie Piper as Doctor Who star, and she'll be a kind of ambassador for the show as well, I suspect. And everywhere she goes, people will be constantly asking her about this again now, which, even though she has never cut ties with the show, obviously she's gone on to do different things since, hasn't she, David? Done a lot of dramas, and she's always promoting whatever she does. And there's always a little question in every interview. Oh, we loved you in Doctor Who, or do you ever see David Tennant? There's always a little aside about it, but here it'll be right at the forefront now, and she will be out representing the show.
It will be, and I look, and I agree. I'm going to be terribly. I'm getting splinters now. I'm going to be terribly wonderful and say that I agree with you, Dan, and I agree with you, Charlotte. And it is possible to agree with you both, but on different points. Because actually, I've said on the streams before that I think the PR relations with the show have been absolutely appallingly bad. And we only have to.
Good, didn't they?
They used to be so good. So Billie is basically our version, hopefully, of Tom Cruise, who for the show. Okay, so she can go out, she can smooth out all the PR, she can go out, and because everybody loves Billie because she's just wonderful. Secondly, to cover both your points, I think, and I'm hoping Anthony, with his extensive knowledge of this time, will also help back me up a little bit, perhaps. But I think that I've got to give Russell T Davies some credit, because he's somehow, in a bizarre sort of way, this is his Trial of a Time Lord episode 14 situation. The shoot is left, but like Eric Saywood did. The reasons for leaving, we will never know until about another 10 years, probably. But Eric Saywood obviously wanted to keep the memory of Bob Holmes going and resigned because JNT didn't like the ending, which would have shown the Valiard and the Master fighting to the death, a la Rhinebeck Falls in The Matrix. So obviously, with the show back then, the BBC would have cancelled it had they given them even half a moment to do it. So that's where Pip and Jane came in. So I consider this moment of Ncuti leaving, with the possibility of fading to black, akin to that original ending that Bob Holmes had in mind, and Eric Saywood, because of Bob's untimely death, was absolutely determined and thought it was a resigning point, and he walked away. So I think the fact that Russell has tried to just be as ludicrous as possible and think, if I put somebody's face in there that everybody loves, everybody they will go, what on earth are you doing? What the hell is going on here? And it keeps the interest alive. Radio 4, it's been featured on Today. It's featured again on 5 Live, must watch. Again, the first thing they talked about before they went into any other TV reviews. It's a massive talking point. It keeps the show in the public eye. And we've now got an ambassador who won't tell people to touch grass. She will just go, this is wonderful. I love the show. Isn't it great? By the way, I'm back with Big Finish in September, so buy that as well, everybody, with Christopher Eccleston.
The impression I always get from Billie Piper is that she's trying to say, I love this show and I love you, whoever she's talking, directing her attention at. She's very, very charming and plays the publicity game so so well. We've got somebody in the live chat has just pointed out that some of the press releases, they're quite right. They don't say that she's playing the Doctor, but plenty of them do. I wouldn't say there's an even split, but enough of them are. So it's clearly a directive has not been given not to describe her as the Doctor. There's psychic beats. Press releases not describing her as the 16th Doctor. Plenty of them are, though. That's what I'm struggling to understand. But plenty of them are.
It is a mixed message, but I have to give. Look, I give credit where credit's due. We can be very critical of Russell's writing, and we should be. But in order to keep a franchise going, he has done, I believe, what JNT did in 1986 to say, I can't afford to give anybody the slightest excuse to kill this off. And he described Billy's code name as Petrol. And
no, that was Jodie's.
I thought it was Billy's.
Yeah, that was Jodie's.
On Jodie's. But then again, if you've got a dying flame, what do? You don't put petrol on it, please, kids, because it'll be nasty. But then you just make it burst into flames. So with a bit of an accelerant. But the whole thing is he has done what he has had to do. But he's written himself into that mess. But he's had the good sense to say, how can I keep people talking about the show? How can I keep it in the public eye?
Exactly.
How can I keep the
when
interest
Anthony
going?
Parkinson points out here that nobody's coming back for Billie Piper, he's quite right. But people are talking about Doctor Who to some extent or another more than they have in a while, and for better or worse, mostly negatively in my experience. But they are talking about it. But he's bought a little bit of attention and a fraction of time. And the series, things have got that bad for the show that he's going to look on that as a positive. Russell T Davies doesn't understand the modern media. He doesn't understand new media. He believes he does, which is even worse than not understanding it at all and knowing it. So we'll see where that goes. We'll see where that goes from there. I mean, I can't see the conversation dying down around what I'm going to start calling this caption gate. I think, Luke, because I don't think it matters really until we get some sort of clarification from Russell, from Badwell, from Billy, from in some way, shape, or form in a press release about what's what and who's who. They'll be quite happy to let this tick along because it will keep the series on the tips of people's tongues. It'll probably set us all at one another's throats about it in the time in between as well. And really, I do think this is kind of what's powering the show at the moment. Not what's on screen, actually what's on screen and the way it's promoted. And that, in my view, that's kind of the biggest shame of all, really. I don't think that's how it should be. I think the drama should be what people are talking about, you know?
Yeah, but how long has Russell been saying he wants to do a surprise regeneration at the end of an episode, and it's near enough impossible? And he almost, he almost had it. Bless him. But yeah, it's I don't know. I think I read something quite funny that by the time she's regenerated into Shooty, or Shooty regenerated into her now, and obviously it won't have something till about Christmas 2026 or 2027. I think her entire that length of time will probably be longer than Shooty's actual on-screen time or something. I was like, that's a bit mad, essentially. But if we have a look at the way things are going now, that clip of the regeneration shooting to Billy, that on Twitter, one clip of it had like 15 to 20 million views. Russell said he wants to create content. He's got his content. He's got his views right there. He's got exactly what he's after. If he's promising that to the BBC, he's like, I will create views for you, because obviously there's different ways to monetize stuff as well. So, and if he's pulling out 15, 20 million views for a shock regeneration, then he's got it. And it'd be very, very interesting.
Even though we weren't shocked on the Type 40
no.
And a great many people were, the general public, the ones who were still watching, and the people who don't watch but were reading about it after the fact, they would have been startled and it may have caught their attention, if only fleetingly. Charlotte, to your point, Philip Roy mentions here, he reminds us that Romana regenerated with Princess Astra's body. So it's not without precedent. It is a complete car crash, though, if she's the Doctor, as Phil.
And here's the thing. I completely agree with you guys. It's definitely got people talking. It's definitely got that sort of modern day thing of Twitter and everybody. But I actually think in the long run, yes, he's technically got a victory now. But I think in the long run, this is going to incredibly damage an already damaged brand, because I've seen a lot of people today and yesterday, and I'm talking about the fan people here, because that's the ones that have kept this brand going for the last God knows how many years. It's not the casuals, it's not the general audience, it's been us lot who are still watching. I've seen a lot of them after that episode go, I'm done. I'm out. If you're going to play these games, Russell, basically, people are saying, if you're going to do stunt casting, if you're going to do gimmicks, if you're going to just give jobs, I've even heard people say, if you're just going to give jobs to your mates, then why should I care? Why should I bother? So actually, I think in the long run, this is going to damage, because people are just walking away. They're going, fine, you've given me an out. You've given me the perfect reason to come back only when you're gone. That's what I'm resoundingly hearing as well. Like I said,
it has affected me negatively, Charlotte. You're quite right.
And like I said, none of this is against Billie. I've hearing resounding big voices on YouTube in the fan space go, until Russell has gone from show running this show, until the BBC completely kick him out and all his group, I am not touching Doctor Who. And I'm like, so if that's going to damage the show even more, even if you've got really big hardcore fans now being against this that strongly.
I think he's trying to win us over as the show's biggest advocates, obviously devotees, win us over. It could be just too little too late, really. I'm still turning this over in my head. My initial reaction was exactly just transparent gimmickry and utter desperation. I like the symmetry of the fact that if this was and is the final episode for a little while, the idea that it leaves the screen with the same face, the first face that we saw all the way back in 2005, 20 years ago. I kind of like that. But they don't intend on leaving it here. Regardless of the appetites or non-appetite of either the general audience or the fandom. And that's something we're going to be picking up on a little bit later on. We've got quotes from everybody involved to get stuck into as well. If you want more from us, we had a big weekend here at Type 40 and Type 40 Live. So there was the Type 40 live stream, our instant reaction to that episode, The Reality War, 2.5 hours worth of it. We went completely off the leash there within a few minutes of the episode screening, with no notes, no prep, very few pictures, just gobs running to the max, and lots of people coming in as well to share their opinions, the hottest of takes, for better or worse, and there it all is, immortalized here across the streaming platforms for you to relive, and drop us a comment there by all means. And there was my Dr. Billie video as well here on the channel, and my short video expressing my own personal opinions about the notion of Billie Piper leading this show, particularly as the Doctor, which I recorded a little while before the episode actually appeared. So there's lots of comments on all of those. In fact, I think they're our biggest videos and live streams too. So thank you for all of that. Keep the comments coming. We'd like some more of that as the page turns again on Doctor Who. But this is Type 40 Live on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and X with our regular live stream magazine show. We have a lot to catch up with a couple of the guys, so we're going to ask their opinions in a moment. We want more from you too about all of this. Maybe you have changed your mind in the couple of days in between. I think, I didn't understand it, Russell. And I have sort of rejected it. This never a truer word has been spoken, I think. But is he listening? Is he paying attention? And does he care? Really, does he care?
Hello. I'm Philip Roy, playing the Doctor in the Doctor Who fan film Doctor Who Meets the Scorpion. I've been on quite an adventure, and this is most definitely the Type 40 podcast.
Yes, season 2 of All New Doctor Who came to a cataclysmic cataclysmic conclusion involving bone beasts, bone palaces, big, huge
Bonio.
monster gods munching down on long lost time lords, ladies, and everything went up the pictures. there was disappearing and reappearing space babies. There were wish babies as well, and all manner of other things. That was before the Doctor exploded yet again. The episode was written by, daubed out by Russell T Davies. The reality war, 65 minutes worth of it, in fact. We made it through with the help of friends. And I think a lot of us came out of it unsullied, unsoiled, near enough. As for the legacy of Doctor Who, I don't know about the state of that, but I do know I've got a couple of extra pundits here tonight we haven't heard from yet. So what was your experience like then, Luke? I know you had a rough weekend, but was Doctor Who was actually viewing the season finale after all this talk? Did that prove to be a highlight or a letdown of your weekend?
Well, I hated I absolutely despised Wishworld. I did not like Wishworld. I loved this season. I thought the season was fantastic, and I watched Wishworld. I was like, "Oh, what is this? Like, what is going on?" And yes, David, I agree with you. But I was like, "What is going on? Like, what is actually going on?" I was like, "Nothing happened. Like, nothing happened." But yeah, so I was quite trepidatious about this. Obviously, yeah, I was quite nervous, quite excited. I said I'm a big fan of Omega. I thought, look, to be,
Who isn't?
I didn't like it. I loved it. I loved it. I had the best time. I had an absolute whale of a time watching this episode. Me and my missus watched it in Brussels.
Yeah.
She's a casual, very, very casual actually. Unfortunately, she's started to pick up a lot of lore now and a lot of canon. So it's actually quite mad when she's spouting off. Yeah, she's pouting off stuff about classic series, and then maybe Rose is this because she looked into the TARDIS and that regeneration energy but bounced back, and that's why. And I was like, I didn't even think of that. I'm like, oh my god. So yeah, I might have corrupted her, but yeah, to be honest, I think for 45 minutes of that episode, I had an absolutely whale of a time. But Shooty was fantastic. I think it's very clear to see where the reshoots come in, and there's a large bit of it because certain characters are quite conspicuous by their absence. Mel is now on a. Mel was never a housewife either. She was a lonely spinster. She was on her own, and also there's another TARDIS parked at a tree somewhere. Jodie Whittaker parked it.
Luke,
so
Luke,
this is.
Luke, don't apply logic. Just
I know,
accept
but
it.
this is it. I watched it though. I watched just the spectacle of it. I had a great time. I had a fantastic time. I was disappointed by Omega. I knew what was coming, so I kind of preempted myself for that. I think I had in my head. I was like, obviously, because what I've heard and what I said, I was like, I know if Jodie's turning up, then I know the other thing is happening. And as soon as Jodie turned up, I was like, oh no. I thought Jodie was great, and I thought Jodie was fantastic, and I thought her costume suited that TARDIS, and I was like, she should have had this one. I was like, she looked great. I thought Shooty was great. I thought Millie Gibson outacted everyone. I thought she was the beating heart of the story. To be fair,
a few people have said that, both Millie and Verada.
Yeah, Verada. Yeah, I thought them two were the real linchpin of this. And I thought they were fantastic. But yeah, I thought it was one of Shooty's best performances, and I was like, oh man, if he acted like this version of the Doctor, then I would be like, I'd be all for it. But I know the damage is done, and I know season 1 was a lot of took a bit of a slamming. So obviously season 2 is going to be a bit of a struggle. But I had an absolutely fantastic. I rewatched it on the flight on the way back today, just in preparation for this, just to make sure it was like.
Did you enjoy it just as much the second time?
Yeah, I had a great time. I watched it and I was like, yeah, I had an absolutely great time. Absolutely great time. I know, Matt, I will not be making a cameo in the Christmas special, unfortunately. But yeah, I had a fantastic time. There's some elements of it I didn't like, but on the whole, as a spectacle, I loved it. I loved it, and I'm all for Billie Piper being the next Doctor. Go for it.
See, Luke, when I've spoken to people, both in the fandom and slightly sort of out of it, people who watch this stuff casually, and who sort of appreciate its cultural relevance, and who will tune in for like season finales and regenerations and things like that. Anytime there's something sensational might happen, a lot of people felt that, you know, that you picked up on there. You can tell where the reshoots are, but actually did a lot of it felt like you could really feel, and you could see it and hear it and feel it crunching its gears as it's made its way through its runtime, but it didn't really flow and had no shape to it. It's like a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of this. Do you think they pulled it? I can accept that you enjoyed it, and I think that's absolutely fine. You know, enjoy all sorts of stuff. But do you think that it was successful, you know, in an objective way?
I think as a series finale, no. I think obviously the plan was never shooties.
Because I enjoyed parts of it. I can't deny I did.
I thought the first 40, 44 minutes, I thought they were incredibly paced. I thought it was very well done. I thought the tail end was very, very tacked on. I thought the regeneration it just felt a bit out of place, and it was like, right, okay, we know where we're going now. But I enjoyed it. Like I had fun watching it. Like I had fun watching it. I had fun seeing Jodie come back. I was excited for when I saw Billie come in. I was very trepidatious to see if they're going to cut the black or they're going to just do the full to go in. But no, I had fun. Like I had fun. I've heard apparently the ending that's leaked is not the actual ending. By the way, that's one thing I found out today. The original ending, that's the ending. That's not the ending. I found out today.
Yeah. I haven't the speculated ending about a party. As I understand it, that's not what my sources have told me at all. There's a tweet that everybody is talking about. I've been sent it at least 8 times, but that's not as it's been explained to me. And it sounds like you might have heard something similar. And that part says my sister is watching the final episodes just to see the new Doctor. So that's, you know, his sister's a normie, isn't she, Charlotte? And Matt talks about his sister all the time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's why, in the hindsight, I really think it was such a shame that they didn't say Ncuti was going and that they did try and pull off this surprise. Because I feel like Ncuti should have been given a bit of that time, which we all do as fans and casuals. You're right, casuals do it. That they go, they're going, I'll watch this final episode then. But because it publicly and officially, they didn't say he was regenerating. I know we said we'd all worked it out.
I think they're hoping that the audience, sadly, the audience for Doctor Who on the night has got so small, it's been diminished so much that they're now in a position where they can make that gambit by having people talk about it after the fact and then hit it up on iPlayer and potentially not just double their audience, but pile it on. And I think it's entirely, I mean, the rabbi was in the chat earlier on. The rabbi, several other people have used the same word, cynical. And I think that's what it is. Matthew Pounder here says it made no sense, but you liked it, Luke. There are lots of things that I like that make no sense at all. I don't think things need to make sense for us to like them or enjoy them. But I think when we do a bit of reflection after the fact and maybe put a different hat on or look from a slightly different perspective, we might see things, if not differently. I still enjoyed it. I know lots of things that I think I know are complete tat. I still enjoy them, and I will give things a lot of. I'll give things an easier time if they make me feel good in a moment, because I'm meant to be entertained by this stuff, Matthew. And I think you and I, Luke, I think we're wired up in a similar way to that. Sorry, Charlotte, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that's why I think the Ncuti, like this felt like this should have been built up as his goodbye. Every other actor has had that, and I feel like they've robbed him of that, especially as in the episode itself, it was just out of nowhere he regenerated for no reason. There was no pathos in the lead up to it. I know we said on the night we had people in our chat who enjoyed his acting in those moments, and if you did, absolutely fair game to you. But I'm saying actually plot-wise, they didn't lead up to a regeneration. It just came out of nowhere, and I think that's a shame for the actor. They should enjoy that moment almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I entirely understand what you've got to say. Before I come to you, Anthony, I just want to bring up this comment from Star Hoovian watching on YouTube, and this ties in to what we were mentioning a moment ago. You know, David, you mentioned it earlier. I've just talked about it a little. This is very much what I'm alluding to. Starhoovian mentions that Russell T Davies here has been quoted as saying, I've seen this quote too. I think it was on camera. I think he was speaking to Susan Twist.
He said it in Unleashed last year about the whole
So he
Susan
said,
stuff.
He said, we're very much in the internet age of storytelling, so we just hope it will generate content. I mean, that's a very strange. This is one of the biggest. Not only is he a titan of the broadcasting industry in Britain, Anthony, he's also one of the most decorated storytellers and screenwriters, and most dependable screenwriters. The audiences love his stuff. This man is a massive creative figure. To think that now in 2025 he would come out with a comment like that, somebody with such polished writing chops and all those awards, this seems like, is this the same bloke?
Yeah, right. So everybody breathe and take back. I've got a lot to say here. So this is going to be the next 25 minutes, right? So
Yes.
I've been listening carefully, and I've been reading the comments in the chat. Oh my goodness. Right. So Russell T Davies, the first run, absolutely exemplary, great, brilliant, millions of people, the kids love it, toys everywhere. It's phenomenal. When RTD2 comes along, you think he's going to repeat the trick. But then for me, in that very first series, he doesn't repeat the trick. And I feel as though that's multifactorial. However, I feel that some of that weakness is that we never got to see the Doctor in that first series. And I know I keep saying that on most shows that I do, but I feel as though he wasn't around for that series very much. So when you got to series 2, I thought it was going to be more of the same. So I went into that series with some trepidation, thinking, oh, here we go again. Am I really a Doctor Who fan anymore? You know, the last couple of years, I am a Doctor Who fan. I'm a classic Doctor Who fan for sure, even now. And I love those RTD 1 years. Matt Smith, Capaldi, great. And then I suddenly lost my mojo for Doctor Who. So actually, when series 2 came along, I was pleasantly surprised. You know, me and Luke, we've talked about this before. You know, I was, as each episode came along, I was thinking, gosh, the Well's great. Lux is really good. Here we are, we're finding a stride. And then we got to Wish World and the finale. And again, I've lost all of my enthusiasm because of the way that, David is absolutely right. This has a Trial of a Time Lord feel about it. You know, there's a Dobdom regeneration at the end. It's a bit messy at the end. There are so many elements thrown into those last 2 episodes. You know, you don't have time to breathe. And I think if anybody had gone on to iPlayer to watch the 3 Doctors of Arc of Infinity to gen up on Omega and who that character was, they might as well have forget it. I mean, it bears no resemblance to the Omega that I remember from classic series. So there are many elements here that have been thrown into a pot to create a finale where it skates along so quickly, so furiously in those, as Luke says, in those first like 20, 30, 40 minutes, it skates along. You know, Omega appears and disappears. You know, Russell T Davies saying the sonic screwdriver looks like a gun. We shouldn't let him have a gun. And then suddenly we give him a gun to destroy Omega, to send him back into his pit. So it's almost like, it's almost like Russell's forgetting his publicity, his own publicity, you know, to say it 1 minute and then forget about it the other. You know, this notion that there's no more TARDISes. Well, I thought the Tennant Doctor had a TARDIS with Donna in the garden. So what do I know? I've lost faith. I lost faith at the end. I had some great, you know, I thought it was great in the middle, but I lost some faith at the end. I feel as though, you know, for Ncuti Gatwa, I mean, he was hardly the Doctor. He was hardly in series 1. He was in series 2 and it was better. And now he's gone. When he said on Graham Norton, all the pieces fall into place, don't they? You probably talked about this on Saturday, but we're filming again in February. Or was that series 3? Oh no, we're filming in February to say goodbye to you in a kind of convoluted and muddled way. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Belinda in a student house when we first met her, and people were taking food? And now she's in a beautiful home with a lovely garden. So there is no logic, Charlotte, sometimes, is there?
Within the episode, he retconned his own character of Belinda. Like I said this on the Saturday show, he had to insert flashbacks to things that never happened on screen.
Yeah.
To explain the whole Poppy baby plot, that apparently all the time she was going on about having to get home to Poppy.
Yeah, and that's a muddle for me. I had to look on Wikipedia to kind of search out the storyline, and I agree with Luke. The first part of that story of that episode is very furious. I didn't enjoy Wishworld at all. I was confused by it. I thought I didn't understand what was going on. But I thought the first sort of like 40 minutes of Reality World was great.
When we watch episodes like that, like Wishworld, Anthony, as Doctor Who fans, I think whether you watch the classic show or whether you came to it with the new series, when it's the first part of something, the first half, you think, even if you haven't quite got it, you think, well, it'll all slot into place next week. But that doesn't happen anymore, does it?
No, and it certainly doesn't happen here. I mean, the build-up for this episode, again, looks very different to the one we had on Saturday. I feel as though Doctor Who's left in a bit of a muddle. Anybody that was a friend of mine texted me on Saturday evening, which I didn't see until Sunday because I turned my phone off. I didn't want to be spoiled, even though I knew all the spoilers. However, she texted me and she said, Doctor Who is a muddle. I no longer understand it. I cannot follow it. I don't understand what it's saying to me. It is a muddle. Somebody who's grown up in the classic times, a casual viewer, not, a fan, but not a fan to, in a fan sense of conventions and Comic-Con and stuff, but loves Doctor Who and always watches it. And she said, honestly, I don't get it. And I don't understand why Rose Tyler is there. Not even linking that to Billy and a doctor. Why is Rose popped up again? It was all a mystery to her. And she was looking to me in a WhatsApp message to try and resolve all of that for her. And I couldn't. I feel as though it's in a bit of a pickle. The Disney deal, the BBC thoughts about the series, how it's been left. David, you're absolutely right. It feels like Trial of a Time Lord. But then equally, I think, Danny, I think you posted this on X. It feels like Survival. It feels like episode 3, where the Doctor and Ace are walking into the sunset, and you don't quite know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
And I think I would have preferred a kind of Trial of a Time Lord, Eric Sayward vision for a finale, where the Doctor is seen to fall into a void and resist the gimmick that Russell's got to write himself out of. And that may just be one line, mightn't it? I've had this, I saw this face before. I quite like it. I've adopted it. It could be as simple as that. However, I think by putting Billy there, it creates a muddle. I think the episode at the end, understandably, was a muddle. And it wasn't as good as the other episodes that ran before it. I thought The Well was great. I thought the Interstellar Song Contest was great. I thought it was good television. But these last two and the elements that they conjured together and threw together and put together for this episode was just too much. There was no time to even pause. The Rani speaking and is eaten in the same breath, and is dispatched in seconds. And this is a program, I will love to my dying day in terms of classic series. And I just feel a bit saddened again that here we are again, unsure, unclear. I just think a pause is required.
I saw a conversation between two people who were catching up about Doctor Who because one, clearly two storied fans of it, people who'd watched it to one degree or another over the years, And this was all played out on social media. And one asked the other, I didn't catch the Doctor Who finale. What happened? And the other one just said, "Oh, Omega ate the Rani." I never thought I'd ever type that. And you think that actually happened.
Yeah, but Dan, look, you're a classic series fan too. But look at that image there, of Omega. I mean, it doesn't come. I mean, that's just Sutek. It's Sutek with the fur off, isn't it? It's the same. I don't see any different between the Sutek version that we had from
and he
Russell
doesn't
T.
do anything, doesn't say anything. There's nothing particular to his character involved. To go back to this at all, just because maybe they wrangled the rights. I don't know. Used a bit of imagery to get it trending, get Omega trending. I don't know. What a cost. I mean, a whole episode surrounding this idea would have maybe worked. I was kind of intrigued by that, just as I was intrigued by the new Rani and seeing that character again, all over, pretty much in a flash, all forgotten in next to no time. I can't imagine people lapping this up. I mean, Simon Ashley says in the live chat here, to be fair, when I went to watch the reality war at my local Odeon cinema, Anthony, on Saturday, which was packed out, he claims at the regeneration scene, everyone stood up and whooped and cheered. Now, obviously, that's the reaction that Russell T. Davies does want. I suspect that, I mean, for a start, the cinema was full. Usually you find that with these screenings, it's not rocket science. If people can see the stuff for free on the telly, not many people. You have to be really invested in Doctor Who to go and spend between £16 and £20 to see something you can watch for free in the comfort of your own home. So nobody's got lofty expectations of these screenings, but usually they're about a third to half at the very most full. But the idea that people stood up and whooped and cheered, I find that, watching reaction videos from fabulous YouTubers, who sit there, it's either them on their own, like younger people or people with their partners, and I don't think I've seen a positive one yet.
I know why they did. I know why they did, because somebody brought in a huge pallet of Maltesers so they could all throw it at the screen. So that's why they did. Sorry, Anthony.
I was going to say, Dan, we need to go back to Simon and ask what they whooped about. Were they whooping at the fact that Ncuti had left, or were they whooping at the fact that as Billy coming in?
You have to wonder. You do have to wonder.
Yeah,
you have to wonder. But on that point, I've seen lots of comments over the last couple of days about cinema events and how packed or not packed they were. I went to, not for this one, but I went to the last screening at midnight, and I expected myself to be the only person in Everyman's cinema at midnight for that particular finale. And it was packed. It really was absolutely packed. I was flabbergasted.
I do think sometimes it is the novelty of going to the cinema, which is a bit of a pull more than the episodes.
Yeah, for me, yes.
Because it's a communal thing as well. Like the fact that if you had a couple of mates who were Doctor Who, you could either sit by yourselves in your room watching it, or you could all get together, go to the cinema, have probably some nice bit of food, have some nice atmosphere, some really hyped atmosphere. I'd guess you've got fans that are probably getting each other a little bit G'd up there, so I think it's a very different viewing experience to see it in a cinema.
It's a communal show. It's meant to be watched by families all together. At least to sit there, watch it with your mum or your big brother, or watch it with your little sister. It's a cross-generational thing. It's a communal thing to enjoy. And so when Luke says, when you said, Luke, I watched it with my other half. She's not really into Doctor Who, and we had a whale of a time. And it doesn't matter if, on whatever level you enjoyed it. For example, for the sake of argument, in Luke's case, as a big Doctor Who fan, you're watching it, Luke, you're looking for all the little bits and bobs of other bits of lore, little idiosyncrasies to the characters. Whereas, a normie, my experience, your other half or your big brother or your cousin or your best mate, they're just watching it to have a laugh. It's all that, look, he ate the time lady. Oh, that happened, or this happened. And it just puts a smile on people's faces. And I think that sometimes a great many of us, myself included, nestled deep into this fandom and decades of being a fan. I think sometimes we can forget that this is meant to be populist telly with a really broad appeal. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't make sense. Of course it should make sense. But there's no shame in it aiming for populism either. Ideally, it should aim for populism and succeed and shoot and hit the goal the way the show used to when Russell was there originally. But so it's not nice seeing him shoot and miss. But I think that they're trying. It's just that he can't. I don't think that Russell T Davies can get out of his own way. And so to hear Anthony sort of detail it so precisely there and so relatably, I think that if Russell could hear the advice or the notes, I suppose, of people who are not just fans for years and years, just people who've been advocates for the show. I think if he'd just open his mind a little bit and start listening, rather than telling anybody who questions his greatness on Instagram to go and F off, I think we may start getting somewhere, but I'm not seeing any indication that day is coming anytime soon.
We got a long time, haven't we, till the next episode of Doctor Who. So we don't know. This was made off the back of back to back for season 1. So, and it's been received a lot better. So who knows? And
it has. That's to be fair. Yeah.
But he might have seen, right, okay, I may have messed up a little bit and it's going down, because like the war between land and sea looks good. That we'll cover in a different time. But that looks all right. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, like I enjoyed it. The Poppy daughter thing I enjoyed. Actually, I thought that made sense of why she wanted to go home the entire season, and I kind of thought it made more sense because obviously in the current time stream or time that the Doctor and Belinda were in, clearly Earth wasn't around. They were going to the well and the Interstellar Song Contest and traveling through space and time, and Earth wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so him, by fixing reality, kind of put it back to the right one where she did have the kids. Like,
I'm a big softie when it comes, Luke. I'm a big softie when it comes to kids, and but there were times during this episode where I was very affected by this, and it was always sort of those moments. Is Poppy okay? Is Poppy okay? And this was, bear in mind, this isn't a character that's got a speaking part. It's not particularly. We didn't know she existed until last week. But I just think that if they'd have lent more into that and made it about her. I mean, if you're trying to describe what the story is about,
I agree.
This entire two-part, it has to be something you can invest in and you can relate to. It's taken me until today, so it's 2 days after the final part and a week after part 1, Anthony, to work out what this story was meant to be about, before Shooty was leaving and before the inflated budget, before the inflated ego and the infestation of ideology. And what I've arrived at is that this story was meant to be about the entire thing, how the way in a sort of circle that the power of wishes, the element of doubt, and the kind of the actualization, I suppose, of will, how wish, doubt, and will are all related to one another as part of the average sort of person of the human experience, I suppose you could say. And I think those were the themes. That's what he was trying to tie together. That's where the story was meant to be going, whereby, you can make things happen if you have enough will. You can almost make your dreams come true. And that you shouldn't, but in doing so, you shouldn't step on anybody else's. I think that's what it's meant to be about. But look how muddled it all is. Look how compromised it all is. Look how ineffectual it is. Look how impossible it is to reach into it and feel anything at all. As I say, the only time I really felt anything, there was surprise when Anita came through that door. Anthony, you could have knocked me down with a feather.
Yes.
Didn't expect that. And the only time where my heart was even slightly in my mouth was when I thought the cute little kid might not be okay.
I agree. And I was quite surprised at that. I was surprised at the little clip of Day of the Daleks and other old Doctor Who stories. I kind of was bought into that to an extent. But I go back to what I said probably, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, when we were talking about character options and the new Shooty Gatwa, Millie Gibson 5-inch figure.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, well, you need a protagonist, you need some monsters. it didn't really, character options wasn't really grabbed by this, was it? There wasn't an audience of children that were interested in this. And those two figures remain the character options contributions so far for this particular reboot of Doctor Who. And I add that, this was always a jumping on point, wasn't it? This was always the moment where you jumped on board, because if you hadn't watched Doctor Who before, and then you had the biggest lore-based episode of Doctor Who in a long while, Omega, the Rani, 2 Ranis, by regeneration, it was coming at you thick and fast, wasn't it? And it wasn't the jumping on point that you kind of was imagining from Russell, and the fact that they didn't grab the kids, and there isn't a huge amount of merchandise for this particular series, kind of says it all for me.
The two things I'd like just to come back on, if I may, please, is one, something that Anthony was saying about how he found the whole thing, or his friend found it so confusing. I was at an evening with Peter Davison night some 12 years ago, and it may be Terence Dicks that he got this quote from, but he said Doctor Who should be complicated enough to keep children interested and simple enough to keep for adults to understand. And then, which is a very Terence-like quote. And then something Luke was saying about it made sense for Poppy, Dr. Poppy, to, for the story for Belinda to get home to Dr. Poppy. Well, it would have done if he'd have started that from the start. If that had been the start point.
Seeded it.
Actually seeded it at the start. Because I think emotionally, it would have affected us parents, because we could have put ourselves in that situation whereby if we suddenly disappear and abducted by an alien race of robots, who's going to look after our kids? Who's going to be there for our kids? And it would have become it would have made us really invest in the character. Then halfway through the series, because it is another writer writing for another companion, because the whole production seemed to have been a complete cluster from the start, we then lose the thread of it. We then lose the thread of Belinda, only for Poppy to become the most important thing in the last 2 episodes, which narratively makes no sense at all, because we haven't had the emotional investment at the start. So it's become this mismatch of disjointed mayhem that is just thrown at the screen, and we are expected to try and understand the characters' motivations 10 minutes before the end. And my final thing on Charlotte, on what Charlotte said, but that Ncuti was robbed of an ending. I'd like to just slightly be devil's advocate with you on that one, Charlotte. Was he robbed, or did he rob himself? It's my question.
Well, we don't know about his exit, do we?
The opportunity was there, wasn't it? I mean, speaking about sort of companions for a moment there made me remember at the time on Saturday, Anthony, I was very disappointed in this as the runtime sort of moved down. I thought they've run out of time for this. And I was very disappointed that she didn't appear at all initially. I actually think it might be more of a blessing that Carol Ann Ford's Susan Foreman wasn't in this after all. Further material was shot and hasn't been used. Could be used at a later. I don't know what to think. I don't think it was unreasonable of us to expect her to be in it. So were you surprised? Were you waiting for that as I was?
I was waiting for that, because this is, for classic fans, this is an important character, isn't it? And when we talked about this on the show previously, Carol Ann Ford coming back to Doctor Who is a big deal. She was seen in the 5 Doctors, but it's a big deal. And how you invest in that character, if you're a classic fan, is enormous. So to have that teased, in a Help Me Doctor is exciting, but to see no resolution to that I agree, Dan. I'm glad she was better out of it, because there was another 2.5 seconds that, you know, that wasn't used up to her, because that would have skated over and not done the character.
Would have been a massive
justice.
indignity.
It would have been an indignity, because it would have been like, oh, sorry, where's Susan? Oh, hello, doctor. You know, skated over like the Rani being eaten, like Omega coming out of his prison. You know, so it would have had the same treatment. And so I'm very glad that she didn't have that. I feel sorry for her that if she has filmed more and it wasn't seen, I would be quite disappointed. So I hope the production has somehow, I hope the production has caught up with her and explained that situation. By the time we see Doctor Who again, you know, 2026, 27, you know, time has moved on. So actually, are we going to go and revisit this Susan element in that series? Or is this just going to be quietly forgotten? This is the bit that makes me the most angry. This is the bit of all of that series that makes me the most angry, because here is a heritage character, a classic character, being used in a pretty bad way that teases the audience, but doesn't, like series 1, teases the audience about Susan's return.
I think it's unforgivable.
Quite see it. It is unforgivable, and that's the bit that makes me the most angriest and also the saddest, because actually here was an opportunity to kind of, you know, join the dots between 63 and 2025, and unfortunately it was fudged for whatever reason. It was fudged. Really disappointed.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm happy that Russell didn't change her and didn't have the opportunity to sort of let's go into that relationship and let's make it something that it wasn't on screen. But now I think this has proven to me that Russell is very willing and very happy to just dangle something in front of the audience. To just go, oh, look, do you remember this? Do you remember this? Because we had, I think it's, and for me, I'm feeling this even more, because we had all that teasing last series of Susan. We had the Susan Twist character. We had him going on about Susan, the Doctor. So now we've had basically 2 series of him mentioning and invoking the image, and then not actually doing anything with it. So now it's just like, Russell, if you try and promise me anything, or if you try and say this in your episodes, all I'm going to do is say, well, when I see it, I'll believe it. Because you were just having plot threads which go nowhere now. You're just mentioning things, you're just making stuff happen into existence for one episode, and then it's dropped.
You're right, Charlotte. And I think that, you know, as Dan, as you said that quote at the beginning when you asked me about the episode, this is internet storytelling. It creates content. Charlotte, you're absolutely right. This created content. But for me, it made very grumpy, angry content, because here is a classic character that wasn't served particularly well. And I think that is the sadness of this particular episode, that, you know, because there's an Unleashed clip, isn't there, with her wearing a completely different outfit to the one we saw her in when she was on screen, that white Mon Mothma type outfit, to this kind of space age kind of green belted outfit. So there was potentially, unless that's her own clothes, potentially there was more to come. I'm grumpy with you, Russell, because we have a very long wait to have that resolved, and please don't try and resolve it. Just create your content with that one, because that was, that's pretty unforgivable.
At least this isn't the worst ever Omega design now. There's that.
Nope.
That's the thing. I'm gutted I didn't get to see Belinda in this red number. That's unforgivable. That's unforgivable too, quite honestly. And what on earth? What about all those other TARDISes? Is he even keeping track of the things he says? He says in his own scripts. It's infuriating. I'd like to understand, but Russell, I don't understand. I don't know what's happened to your talent, to your populist eye. This is Doctor Who. When is anything ever the final word on any of it? We reserve the right to come back to it again at a later date. In fact, try stopping us.